All right.
All right, starting from my left, your right. Give us a little bit of background about yourself, about 30 seconds. Mr. Johnson.
All right, I graduated Camp in High in 48. Was drafted 50, November 1950. Took 8 weeks of basic in Fort Dix. Went over, sent me to Korea. Put me in a heavy weapons platoon. I fired a machine gun, had 75 recoilless, the AR, all the heavy weapons. My MOS was machine gun. Never fired a machine gun basic. Took about 9 months before they finally got me.
High school 50.
I was wounded in November of 1951.
We'll get into that.
I went in service when I was 17. Took my basic in Fort Dix. I went to Fort Lewis, 2nd Division. I hit Korea in August of 1950. In Korea, I was on 57 recoilless rifle, machine gun, flamethrower, and rifleman.
And what weapon were you most off to use?
Machine gun.
Machine gun.
I become a machine
Was that
gun.
the 30 cal like Mr. Johnson had? The 30 cal.
30 cal machine gun. I ended up in July.
And don't forget, you were from where? You're a South Jersey guy.
That's from Osage, a little town in Voorhees.
Okay.
I grew up in West Philadelphia. I would not want to live there today.
Say
And
your
I was
name.
drafted at the age of 20. I served 16 weeks. I trained with the 101st Airborne Division. Pardon me, I trained with every infantry weapon on up, including the flamethrower. But my basic weapon was a Browning automatic rifle. And when I was sent overseas during the last Chinese Communist offensive, when I arrived in Korea, they sort of took away my rifle and gave me pencils and a .45 caliber pistol. I was sent to an unstructured hospital up closer towards the lines, and I saw a lot of severely wounded.
So you're familiar with the mass units, correct?
But there was no humor where I was.
I
Yes,
understand
quite
that.
familiar.
And your name is?
Stanley Levin.
Sir.
My name is Ike Hand. Went to Morristown Friends School. I started at Temple University, and one evening in the night school, a bunch of us decided school wasn't for us. What do you want to do? We went down and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. 3 days later, we were down at Paris Island, and one drill instructor said to the other, "What can you do with these guys?" The other drill instructor said, "Anything you want, you just can't kill them."
And what was your MOS, sir? Were you infantry?
0300 infantry, yes.
0300. And you got to Korea about what time? What
51,
51?
yeah. 11th replacement draft.
Start with
Yeah.
your name first.
My name is Carl Letizia. I joined the Navy at 17 of June 1950. The Korean War broke out in 1950. Graduated boot camp, got assigned to the Corpsman School, which is known as the Medics. I come out of the Corpsman School, I got assigned to USS Midway aircraft carrier. I got tired of being a nurse for the carrier. I joined the Marines. I was half Navy and half Marines. And my job in Korea was to save lives, not to take lives. But I had the means to take a life.
Okay, so you carried a 45?
I carried 45 and a carbine.
So your story is not unlike Bradley, who was the one of the flag raisers at Iwo Jima. Is that correct? You
Yeah,
did the
same thing.
job.
I was a
Navy
corpsman with the Marine Corps. It was all Navy supplies the Marines with
Don't
medical
call them corpsmen.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah.
And,
We'll shoot you.
Going back, everyone who, and just for the record, restate your name when we go through this again. When you talk to Korean War veterans, one of the things they're always going to remember is the weather, the fluctuation of the weather and the hazards of the weather. Why don't you just spend a little bit of time talking about that? Yeah? Go ahead.
Sal Junta, I experienced the summer and the winter because I was in April 51. And the summer was nothing but monsoon, rain for 2 or 3 months. Small as I was, I had a platoon on, poncho on, and I was always wet. And it was very hot.
Go ahead. Anyone else
The,
about
ri-
the weather?
the rice paddies were fertilized with human waste, and that odor never left your nostrils. In fact, 3 to 5 miles on a ship en route to Korea, we looked at each other, what's that smell?
Yeah.
We had no idea. Well, that's
Yeah.
one of the unfortunate experiences.
Yeah.
We called it honey.
Yeah.
The honey carts.
Yeah.
Once you get that smell, that old, you can just visualize them rice paddies going up the side of the mountain. Talking about the monsoons, when you come off the front lines, you work with the engineers throwing rocks and stuff in holes along the road and troops that get your vehicles through. and we used prisoners to pick up the rifles.
One of my jobs was to carry the BAR, and we taped the firing pins of the 30 caliber machine guns under our arms because it was so cold. If we didn't, they'd crack and jam the guns. So we covered the field of fire with the BARs till they got the 30 calibers going. And it was quite tricky. It was cold, really, really cold.
So you're relying on the warmth of underneath the arm?
That's correct.
60 pounds.
Yeah.
Now
And,
the BAR fired 20 rounds, is that it?
yeah, magazine of 20 rounds.
Fully
And
automatic.
one interesting thing was when the Chinese came, they wouldn't fight with less than 20 to 1. And one time they were coming up the mountain, and we looked down at the fellow next to me. He said, "Don't shoot the first one. He's a kid." And when he came up, we grabbed the kid, took the stick out of his hand, spanked him, and sent him home. "Okay, go on home, sonny. Your mother's calling you." And everybody started laughing. We could hardly fight for the
You
laughter.
spared the guy, right?
No, we couldn't kill him.
Yeah,
Not
they
kid.
fired 600 rounds a minute, and you don't dare touch that barrel. That's how hot it got.
You never get your hand off of it.
Now, the same round that was in a BAR was also in the M1, right?
You want
So
30
they're
caliber.
interchangeable, right?
Yeah, again, my job was to save lives. When a Marine gets wounded, the first 15 minutes decide if he's going to live or die. My job was to get to that Marine, no matter what the conditions were. When you heard corpsman, doc, whatever, you knew someone was hit, no matter what the conditions were. My job was to get to that Marine and stop the bleeding, give him a shot of morphine, get him stable, and get him out of there.
All
And
this while you were under fire.
well, at times, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, we were staying with the cold just a little bit with you. In the colder weather, would the bleeding be?
Yeah, colder weather, the blood would coagulate with the cold weather. I was there summer, and all I remember is being soaking wet for 3 days, like I fell in a lake. In the wintertime, the corpsmen would put morphine in their mouths to keep it from freezing, and morphine was the most important thing to get to a wound and stop the pain.
One of our chapter members, who was supposed to be Fred Connolly,
Yes,
was
I know
bayoneted
Mr.
through the neck. But he didn't bleed to death because of the cold.
Yeah.
So cold.
I actually had interviewed Mr. Connolly
Oh, you
before.
know.
Tremendous story, and he was there earlier than you guys were. Yeah, he actually was in fought
Yellow,
in,
yellow.
yeah,
Also inshot.
Yeah, I remember his story. It was a very, very poignant story. He had a famous picture taken of himself too when he was in another uniform.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Going along with this, one of the things I think that we would like you to share is like, here you are, and right after World War II, and America was basically, we thought we were going to have some period of peace, and next thing you know, you're in a war again. And how did that feel, being young like you were, and sent overseas, and here you are in another war, and we thought World War II was going to end it all? I mean, how did that make you feel?
We grew up in a very patriotic era.
Yeah.
I remember all the males disappeared from the streets during World War II. Everybody disappeared, the service. So we were accustomed to that, and when the Korean War broke out, we anticipated and knew we would eventually be drafted. And none of us never would have entered our mind to not go forward.
Anybody else?
Talking about males off the street, everybody's parents, both people were working, your mother and father. You learned to cook at home, do work at home.
I appreciated life more because I've seen so many bodies mangled and death, and I look forward to a good dish of spaghettis my grandmother made.
That's true.
That's the truth.
Yep.
I was trying to capture, if I could, the mood you were about being thrust into the middle of a war zone like that. And here you were, almost like a fish yanked out of a pond. How was that when you got there, and all of a sudden there's a war all the way around?
You were scared.
Yeah, I was scared.
If you didn't say you weren't scared, you lied.
Yeah.
Everyone was scared. We were scared on the ship going over.
No.
We got there.
Yeah.
I have something very vivid memory.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
When we were on the ship going, Stanley Levin, on the ship in mid-ocean, we were all gung-ho, boy. We were highly trained infantrymen. Let's get them. And the ship was so noisy. There were 3,700 men stuffed on the ship. And all of a sudden, this giant white ship passed us, maybe 3 miles over with red crosses on it going in the opposite direction. And the ship grew absolutely silent because we knew what was on that ship.
Wounded guys.
Deadly
Oh,
wounded.
yeah.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Before I move on to the next question, anybody else want to address that? Okay, now, everyone has 2, 3, 4 memories that are going to stay with them forever. And I would like you to think about the question and say, okay, if I was to say to you, what was like, what's a memory that is maybe painful or maybe just stands out that's going to stay with you forever?
First day,
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah,
Mr. Adolph.
Go ahead, Adolph.
Mr. Adolph.
first day in combat, you're your first person killed. I only knew the guy 3 weeks,
And you knew him well?
and we had our first 2 killed. Him, and we had a Marine went all through the Pacific, came in the Army. He was our mortar squad. He was number 2 man. Killed him. Now, it's been on my mind a long time.
Was that an
Yeah.
artillery fire? Artillery?
Now,
How was he?
small arms.
Small arms fire?
Yeah.
Okay, and you saw that, and how did it affect you? What was going through your mind?
It didn't affect me till after everything quieted down. And then I started thinking, that could have been me. We're laying side by side or in a row. That could have been me. His name was Shep, and he was from Alabama.
And there
Yeah.
you go. He makes it through World War II only to
Yeah, I heard.
My first day in combat was a young fellow named John Eisenhart. I lived in Pittman. We were walking along, and he happened to step off the path, and stepped on mine and blew him to pieces. Well, that was on my mind forever.
And how close were you to that, Mr. Jim?
Right next to him.
Right next to him.
There's a mine there. I just didn't go off, he did.
That was,
I remember the first wound that I attended to. The Marines were on a patrol. I was well protected. The point man stepped on a landmine, big explosion. Myself, another Marine, ran up to him. His left leg was missing. The other leg was mangled. He had no pain at the time. I tried to stop the bleed as best I can. I gave him a shot of morphine, and I called for a stretcher. And he said, no, I'll get up. He didn't know his leg was missing. And that's kind of stuck with me. Didn't know he lost his left leg.
that
And,
traumatic amputation, I guess, like.
The shock stopped the pain, more or less. Pain comes later, maybe 4 or 5 minutes.
Right.
But I gave him a shot of morphine to ease the pain. Put him on a stretcher. We had to carry him a mile back to the camp. He survived.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Good. Mr.
The
Mann?
first night that I was there, I got in the hole with the gunnery sergeant had been on Guadalcanal. And he said, you grab him, pull him in, and I'll stick him, and make sure you throw him out. We can't fill the hole up. And I couldn't believe what he said. And as the night wore on, this happened. And the next morning, what we saw, I shook like a dog on a barbed wire fence, and I was so scared. But when it happened, I wasn't scared at all. I guess the adrenaline had gone so much, and I never forgot that.
So this was like a sentry attack, or it was like a night?
The Chinese were coming up the hill, and they just kept coming and coming and coming. And he said, just grab him. I'll stick him and you throw him. And
And how many times did you do that night?
I guess there was 25, 30 of them laying out there in the morning. And I got sick. I got sick from fear. I didn't, when it happens, you don't realize it. But when it's all over and things quiet down and daylight comes and you see what you've done, holy cow, I just couldn't believe what we did, and it really affected me. It really did.
Yes, sir.
The luck of the draw, I've never lost sight of that. Fate and luck. I trained with 200 men, derived overseas. I never saw anyone again. Military puts you where they need you. All went in different directions. About 4 years ago, I located one of my guys that I trained with, and he was on Pork Chop Hill. And it made a terrible face, so such combat, all the stories he told me. He went one way, I went another. Just this element of luck is incredible.
Yes, sir.
I never lost sight of that.
Well, I got the first 2 North Koreans I seen. They stood up in front of me about 15 yards, looked, dropped their weapons, and turned around. I could have been had. I had 2 friends. The guy with me on the machine gun. I had put on that before I left. I come home. I got a phone call that either he was dead or he was captured. His mother and father come down to see him. And by luck, he was captured, made it back from Lakewood. I was looking through a book, and they had this guy in there, a master sergeant. I turned around, I called the number. I said, you stayed in, you were a master?
So you stop right here. Okay. I'm going to pick up right there. That man needs a little water. Okay,
Put a little vodka in it.
I'm sorry.
Got
What you're gonna have to do,
Yeah.
Mr.
Should've
Adolph,
put
is
some
back
vodka in
up,
there.
and then we start the
Thanks. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
we'll start with Mr. Adolph. You're doing great. You're doing very, very good. Nino, we're good?
Yes, sir,
We're good. You
absolutely.
guys are doing well. A little bit more interaction among yourselves, but this is doing good. And then, you're gonna get hit with your friend, Mr. Pope, right? Story.
Well, I wanted to talk about the spring offensive that Ike talked about.
Okay.
Anyone
Well,
mentioned
stand
that?
by,
hold
stand
on
by
to
just
it.
1 second.
Stand by for a second.
Ike, do you want to hold on to that, or do you want to just hand it back to me?
If you don't mind, can I just sit it
Does
down?
anyone else need anything, water or anything before we go on? This is going very well. We're gonna pick up again with Mr. Adolph, then we're gonna go to Mr. Junta. Okay? All right. Tell me when I can go.
Oh, man.
Okay, Mr.
I was reading the book and Vincent was in there, his phone number's in there. I called him up, I said, look, you stayed in, hey, Master Sergeant. He was captured in 51, so both of them were captured in 51, and both of them made it back.
Now, was that the prisoner exchange after the war in 53?
That was after the war. The one was during the war. The one Bunny from North Jersey. The other one was about 5 years ago.
Now, did you talk to him after? Did he report any abuse or anything?
We talked a little bit on the phone, and I didn't ask him any of the questions, what it was like over there. His family stuff.
Right. And that was, before I get to Mr. Junta, from what, I mean, I don't want to jump to the end of the war, but one of the things that held up the war for so long was the talking about the prisoner exchanges, right?
Yeah.
Many of the North Koreans and Chinese didn't want to go back.
Right.
No.
And the thing that always bothered me, and I remember teaching about this, was people were dying, fighting about, like, while we were talking about how to get the prisoners back to each other.
Yeah.
And guys just kept on fighting.
Yeah.
Mr. Junta?
Well, I don't know if anybody mentioned this, but in the spring offensive, the Chinese would throw all civilians in the front. And one thing I really felt bad about, we had to shoot these civilians before
Yeah.
soldiers were back.
Yeah.
The Chinese would all come.
It-
Remember that?
Waste your ammunition.
Yeah.
Loads
what it was.
of Chinese civilians.
Well, what I couldn't get over, we saved the Chinese butts from World War II. Now they're trying to kill us.
Yeah.
I could never figure that out. If it wasn't for us, they would speak in Japanese.
Right, yeah.
And,
well,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they're trying to kill us.
A lot of them didn't really want to be there. They were just pawns in a game.
in fact,
Really?
many of the Chinese didn't know they were in Korea, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
thought they were still in China.
But they knew how to kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were
Yes, sir.
poorly clothed, very poorly clothed. I could tell you a story about that.
The Chinese were poorly clothed.
Oh, yeah. We,
Okay. We may be able to get back to that.
Okay.
Yes, Mr.
Regarding the peace talks, during those 2 years of peace talks, 20,000 Americans were killed in combat.
Right.
As the war approached that signing of the ceasefire, Sigmund Rhee did not want that war to stop. He wanted us to move back into North Korea and unify, which was impossible. So he managed to free hundreds of prisoners from prison camps. When I first arrived in Korea at night by truck, I was landed at prison camp number 9 where the prisoners had just escaped. I was issued a weapon, a wooden bunk, and some supplies, and I didn't know what my future was going to be at that point in time. But that
Now, was it after that they decided to keep those prisoners on an island? Was it
Wamido.
Seishu Island?
No.
Not Wamido, Seishu.
No,
it was at the south part.
South, oh, yeah.
Kojido. That was different.
Chichido.
Chichido.
Chichido, yeah.
Kojido. That was different.
Yeah.
They were contained, but there were prison camps scattered around. This is in the mountains, somewhere north of Busan. And he emptied the prison camp, those isolated prison camps. So that's where I was.
I guess Korea was one of the first where politics started getting in the way of the war. I mean, prior to that, we didn't have as much of that, but Korea sort of brought in the politics a little bit there.
Did, yeah.
I read the book The Coldest Winter, and we were talking before. And as a historian, one of the most overlooked people in American history is Walton Walker.
Yeah. General.
Would anyone care to address or back me up on that, about him and his part in the Korean War?
Well, as you are aware, he was a hero of World War II. He was one of Patton's top tank commanders.
Right.
And he was thrust in when the North Koreans were pushing us down Dunkirk, like we almost had to evacuate South Korea. He issued the command stand or die. You probably are aware of that.
Yes, sir.
So he was a great leader there.
Yeah.
No
Anybody
question.
else want to weigh in on that, Walton Walker? Then the other side of that would have been the role of MacArthur in this war. And
Yeah.
what do you think about MacArthur?
He was.
How much time do I have?
Yeah. In a nutshell, he was all right up to a point, and after that, I think his ego got the best of him, and we could have gotten an awful lot of trouble. He wanted to go all the way up into China.
Yeah, he wanted to bomb the
Yeah.
atomic bomb.
Yeah, now,
Okay.
basically, after the invasion of Incheon, he sort of, took a little bit, he pushed up to the north.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he was a
That's why
hero.
Truman went over to put the kibosh to it.
He was considered a hero at the landing at Incheon, which they didn't think they could make it. It wasn't for the Incheon, they went up to the Island River. And of course, he wanted to drop the atomic bomb, and that kind of got him in trouble.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
So you agreed with the firing of
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely.
all five of you?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
As far as that's concerned, Walker showed him up.
Yeah.
Walker showed him up when he saved boots on.
May I elaborate on
Sure,
MacArthur?
sir. Be my guest.
Incheon was one of the most brilliant tactics ever achieved.
Right.
After that, the worst military tactics ever in military history was MacArthur's fault.
Yeah.
He drove, there was a huge mountain range in the center,
Mhm.
and he sent the 2nd Division, the 25th Division, and Rock Division on one side, and the 7th Marine Division, the 1st Marine on the other side, and they couldn't support each other.
Right. Well, going up north, the actual geography of Korea goes like this, and the gaps between the
Yeah.
units were very big.
And they could not support
Yeah.
each
He
other.
also said the Chinese would never get in.
Right, and they came across in big
Yeah,
numbers.
Boy, did they ever.
they weren't ready for the Chinese to come in. They didn't think they would come in.
Now, by the time most of you fellows were in there, okay, the North Korean influence had been mitigated, but more and more the Chinese were taking control of war. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Anything about the styles of fighting between the North Koreans and Chinese, or what was it like to come up across the Chinese? Like
They were erratic. I mean,
Yeah.
they had no value of life. I mean, they would charge a machine gun, think nothing of it. It felt like they were on drugs. And then one guy would carry a rifle, and two guys would be behind without a rifle. They would pick up the rifle that the guy just got whacked.
Yeah,
And,
I heard stories about that where the one guy would have the rifle, the
Yeah.
other guy would have the ammunition, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't fight unless the odds are at least 20 to 30 to 1.
Yeah.
Mr.
The
Adolf?
other thing with that is most of the Chinese were all carrying burp guns.
Those
If
Russian
their way
Russian
to
burp
throw the
guns.
moose right at, they could throw out. And North Koreans didn't have the people. The Chinese didn't care who got killed, as long as they could keep moving.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
They killed their own civilians,
right. I guess there was a lot of civilian,
South Koreans.
South Korean, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
The,
God.
the, the Chinese were better dressed, better outfitted than the North Koreans. And by the way, we treated the enemy that was wounded
I
just
was
like
gonna
we
get
treat
to
our
that.
own.
I was gonna get to that, and I didn't know how quite to bring that
Yeah,
up. So your treatment of an enemy soldier was?
Just like he was a human being, where they shot our wounded, we took, well, he came last, we treated our wounded first. And then we got done treating our wounded, we
course.
treated the enemy, because he was a human being, he wasn't an enemy no more. But they didn't treat us like we treated them, that was
And-
No.
And I guess years later, how does that make you feel?
It's a good question. It made me feel like I was, I don't know, to be truthful.
Resentment?
After I heard the
Anger?
things they did, I was sorry that I treated them.
One thing, you didn't want to be captured, that was the main thing.
Is that,
No.
was that did
That
you
was
see,
the saying amongst the,
did you
the
see
guys.
evidences of,
nothing to capture.
soldiers that were executed by the Chinese or Koreans? Did you see evidence
It
of
was
that?
the North Koreans did the executing.
Yeah, they did.
put a
Yeah.
bullet right in their head if you're captured.
Wire your hands behind your back and they shoot her. That's what they were doing.
And you came across things of that nature? No.
I never did.
Mr.
no.
Argento did, yeah.
I heard
Mr.
about it, I
Argento, you
didn't
all,
see it.
tell the story about the, your loader on a machine gun 30 cal. You have the person who
Assistant
traverses
gunner.
it. Yeah,
Assistant.
assistant gunner. And the interesting thing, and I'd like you to tell that story, is that you did visit his family years later. Can you tell the circumstances of how he died and then what was it to visit the
Well,
family? As he's
my-
talking, think about a story like that. You may want to hear
My
what we got.
company was overrun with Chippewa. Job Hogan and I were in the foxhole. I was the gunner, he was assistant gunner. So I don't know, all of a sudden, missile, my D-2 says missile, but it was a hand grenade, come in the hole. He took most of the blood. blown up to pieces. I was a little lucky. And the helicopter came in. And the helicopter took me back to field hospital like MASH. I was still out. I could hear the helicopter rotor ringing even though I was out. I landed in the MASH hospital. I could feel them working on me. I could feel them working on me. And a few days later, they flew me back to Japan, and I was in the hospital in Japan in Osaka.
Now, is that when they send you home, or do they send you back to Korea?
Never went back to Korea. No, that was it.
Now, you visited his home, didn't you? Didn't you visit his family?
That was after the war,
About what year?
1952.
And what was that
South
like?
Carolina.
Mhm,
The name was John Poe,
mhm.
African American family.
Right,
That was, in fact, that was the first war where they integrated.
right.
The Truman did that. And we only had one
Range did too.
black in my company, and that was him, John Poe.
Okay. We're going to cut it off here. We're going to take a break, and you need to just think about what you want me to do when we come back, okay? We're going to take about a 5-minute break, get some water, relax,
Thanks.
and give me some feedback on how this went, okay? How we're doing.
No, from your water.
Thank you.
I put a little